Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Civivi Exarch, or Exarch. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. It's a front flipper, a budget front flipper. This is a really cool knife. You guys know I'm big on simplicity. So as far as an aesthetic bias, yeah, there is one here. We're going to talk about all the other little elements of it, but just so you guys know, like I really like simplistic aesthetics. So this really spoke to me. This was sent by the Apex Pass Around group. So by extension, Civivi, the manufacturers themselves. Thank you so much for that. And thank you also, of course, to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon and get your hands on some of these cool stickers, there is, of course, a link down in the description. The support would absolutely mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the Exarch coming in at, yeah, I'm not counting the lanyard loop, 7 1/4 inches overall. Blade length coming in at 3 1/4. And cutting edge coming in at just shy of 3 inches, probably 2.9 or so. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1's coming in at 8.6 inches overall. Sorry, centering up here. 8.6 inches overall in the Rat. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. So it is the same length, but you can see there the common theme is that it is much thinner, or shorter, I guess, in height than all of these knives. And that absolutely contributes to carry profile, despite it being not, it's not a tiny knife in terms of length, right? But overall dimensions on this guy, yeah, it is definitely small. So how's the action on this guy? It is a front flipper. It's running on bearings. It is typical Civivi smoothness. So anybody who's handled a Civivi, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You get a lot of quality in terms of fit and finish and action, what to expect from the action, in terms of what you're paying for here, which, by the way, this will be included down in the description. You'll be able to pick this knife up if you want to. There'll be a link down there. Yeah, it's great. Now, this is a front flipper, which is not nearly as prominent means of deployment versus like thumb studs, thumb holes, and flipper tabs, which that's primarily what we see in the knife world. But with it being a flipper tab, and I played with a few of these, not so much that I'm like an expert or feel super comfortable, but I'm kind of adapting to the idea, and I think on top of that, a lot of these makers have figured out where to place things, what types of designs work best, and this does work really, really well. Front flippers will wear your thumb out. It's something that I don't point out a lot in front flipper reviews. If you sit here and fidget with it forever, it's really fun to play with, but it does wear your thumb out. Now, considering that that's pretty much the case on all front flippers, at least the ones that I've handled, yeah, this is pretty easy to manipulate. It's not an exposed frame lock, so you don't have to worry about, a lot of people are, the profile's so thin, on an exposed frame lock, like on the Feist, the Kaiser Feist, yeah, that can be a problem because figuring out where to put your hands and keep pressure off of that lock bar while at the same time trying to awkwardly sort of manipulate this without throwing it or dropping it. That's a problem on an exposed frame lock, but this is not exposed, which means you can put your fingers wherever you want, and you really just have to worry about engaging this area right here at the right spot and breaking the detent the right way. As far as front flippers go, yeah, this is really easy to manipulate. I really don't have a problem with it. I've handled ones that I think are a little bit better, but for the most part, I think just about anybody can figure this out. So that's great. Very, very good. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. We'll get out my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, 2 items that are extremely inexpensive and extremely recommendable. You can find them both down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every single video. Just pull open the store and look for knife maintenance. I believe we are looking at a T8 here. Sorry, I have an eyelid twitch, so I'm dealing with that off camera. Yeah, T8 right there. And then what's the body screw, which there is just one, or well, probably maybe another one underneath those pocket clip screws. Yeah, it's T8 also. So fantastic. Civivi's usually really good about that. That's awesome. I love that it's minimal and that it's the right sizes, in my opinion. You're probably looking at those look like T6 pocket clip screws. But that's not a big deal. I don't usually count off of that because you don't necessarily have to take those off. Maybe in this case you do. We better go ahead and check those either way, just so that everybody is on the same page. We'll get a T6 out here real quick and check that. So pocket clip screws are, yes, they are T6. So not that big of a deal. I applaud the minimal hardware in this guy and the fact that the main screws are T8, and that's what I always look for, so that's great. No issues there. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So up against the Spyderco Para 3, you can see their thickness. We're looking at pretty much exactly the same thickness, perhaps a little bit thicker, surprisingly, on this guy. But listen, where it makes up in that slight excess thickness, I mean, it's easily made up for by the fact that the profile of this object just makes it so easy to carry. It's not as long as either the PM2 or Para 3, two knives that have unquestionably awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about. And it's nowhere near as tall. It's like less than half the height, right? So yeah, there's no issue with the carry profile whatsoever. In terms of blade stock thickness, we are not coming in super thick here. We'll just go back here on the over tab, 117,000. So between 100 and, it's probably closer to 115 there. Not thick on the spine, which is good considering the profile of the blade is one that is pretty narrow. So there's not a ton of room to drop towards the cutting edge. We'll talk about that here in a sec. G10 and steel liners, 2.65 ounces. It's a winner. It's a winner. Unless, you know, you will not carry anything heavier than the bug out, mini bug out, or Para 3 lightweight, this is a winner. This is even a knife that's going to be somewhat friendly in athletic shorts, skinny jeans. You know, I mean, if you're wearing tighter pants, I guess it's going to be fine. It's also going to be fine in, you know, regular jeans, khakis, whatever. I think this is a knife that's a lot more appropriate in an office setting. Obviously, use your best judgment. It's not going to be legal everywhere. But this is a knife that, because of the way that it looks, it's just less intimidating. It looks like just a tool of convenience, which is exactly what it is, right? And to me, that's what all knives are, or conversation pieces. Yeah, this is great. There's very little to complain about here. If you don't like thickness in the range of the PM2 or Para 3, then I guess that's the one thing you can complain about. But for me and most other people, and I mean like 99% of people, you're not going to have a problem carrying this guy at all. All right. Did we go over everything there? Yeah, I think that we did. Let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. So this knife comes in a wide variety of different colors, I believe. You can check them out in the link down there. This one is blue, and I think it looks nice. Blue is a color that, you know, especially when it takes a form like this, looks even less intimidating. So for people, you know, who are, I'm not going to try and tell you guys how to act, but for people who are, you know, want to make sure that the people around them, whether it's your friends or your work associates or whatever, are not, you know, made uncomfortable by you as the knife guy in whatever social setting, you know, you're in. Blue is a nice color for that because it's not scary, right? So it looks nice. You don't have contour G10, but heavy chamfering going on. And it sort of gives that impression of contouring, and I think that's nice. You know, a little bit of excess thickness here helps fill out the hand in a profile that's pretty narrow. So it is aiding there, but it's not. You don't really have ergonomic lines, so I think it kind of needed that. I think it was necessary that the scales are a little bit thicker than they could have been. So I appreciate it there. All these corners, everything's nicely knocked down. There's no sharpness anywhere, and the fitment on it is just perfect. That's great. I love Civivi's show side pivot, right? That allows them to keep everything else off the blade. Carries out about 70% the length of the blade. There are no sharp edges up here, which is nice. I'm really happy with that, considering it has that same satin finish that I see on like every budget knife ever. I'd like to see Civivi do more tumbling, like on the Statera, maybe a little lighter, maybe a little more reflective, but this is totally fine, right? The main thing is we don't have rough edges or anything like that. Despite it, you know, not having a lot of room to drop, boy, it does come down to a nice thin edge. That is a nice thin edge for sure. And we don't have too much delicacy at the tip, considering we don't have too much thickness on the spine. So yeah, this is a freaking great blade. This is a really, really good little EDC blade. I just don't have any complaints there. There's no jimping back here. Curiously, they put the jimping here, which just put the jimping up here. Jimping back here doesn't make any sense. Truthfully, I don't know why that's there. Whether it had jimping or not, you know, if this is basically the same thing to me as it not having jimping, which is totally acceptable. But I wish it was up here. Not that I would be doing anything that would require me to bear down really hard on the spine of the knife, in the case of this knife, right? But, you know, whatever. Like I said, whole blade is sterile except for the stamp for the blade steel. I think that's great. I guess you could call this little area kind of a choke-up position. Kind of is. It kind of isn't. It's kind of trivial to me. Ergonomically, I mean, yeah, there's enough material here to where it fills out the hand enough, and you also have complete and total freedom as far as where exactly you want to put. Despite this being a 7 1/4 inch knife, absolute freedom. There's a lot of room to kind of move around and just put your hands wherever you want. You have no guidelines. Put your hands where you want. On the flip side of that, because there are no guidelines at all, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to hang on to, which is kind of why I want to emphasize I don't think that this is a knife that is overly versatile. I think it's going to be pretty specific to like non-glove situations, right? General EDC. If you're going to have to really depend on the security in hand when you're using this thing, then this is probably not going to be the right knife. But for general EDC tasks, it's fine. There's a little bit of a peel ply texture on here, which provides some much needed traction. But see, I mean, the idea here is to create a certain design flow. I mean, it's just a straight line and a straight line with a little bit of belly. So, you know, I'm attracted to this knife aesthetically, and I really appreciate what they were doing here. It's not they're like, oh, whoops, we forgot to add ergonomic lines, darn it. You know, stupid us. No, they were going for a certain aesthetic look. So considering what, you know, the limitations that they have when designing a knife like this, I appreciate all the little steps that they took to ensure that you could still hang on to this knife, right? So I'm not going to count it off too much for ergonomics, but just be aware of that. I mean, you can hold on to it, but there's nothing really locking you in except for a little bit of thickness in the scales and a little bit of traction on the surface of the scales. There is a nice little cut out here. I really appreciate that for engagement of the liner lock. There's not a big area here. So it's nice when there's a cutout and they've got just enough jimping on there to be able to engage that. Same thing with the flipper tab. There's not a lot sticking up, right? But the part that is sticking up has just enough traction on there where you can easily do that over and over and over again. You will definitely, with a front flipper, if you're going to EDC this thing, your thumb will develop some serious dead skin doing that over and over and over again. But again, I mean, they did what they could to make sure and ensure that this was easy to manipulate. This area here that is not really a forward choil does serve as a nice place for a blade to come down and meet your fingernail before you put it back into position. If you're somebody who likes to do this, then fine. But I like to do this and have it come down and stop here and then move my finger out of the way and close it. And they took measures to ensure that that was the case and that it was convenient, so I like that. You can see that there is a position on the other side where you can mount a pocket clip, right? It is not set into the scales. A lot of people don't like it when they mill a pocket out. I'm indifferent about that, but for people who are bothered by that, no worries. It's just 2 holes. They've provided that, or well, it's just the screw that you put in, I guess, to hold the scales down, but you can flip it over, so it's fine. On the inside, by the way, we didn't talk about this. They did mill the steel on the inside, so that's nice. Probably, I'm surely contributing to the, the weight on this guy being so low, so that's awesome. There is a G10 bag spacer. I think that looks nice. It's got a lanyard loop that is just barely big enough to smash some 550 through if you have to. But whatever. I don't use lanyards. Most people don't. So it's there, I guess, if you need it. But it's out of the way and not being emphasized over the pocket clip, so that's fine. The pocket clip is a typical Civivi pocket clip. It has a bill that will almost undoubtedly snag on something at some point. Hopefully it doesn't snap. Hopefully it just bends, in which case you can just take it off and put it back on. So, whatever. I always like it when it's more of a swoop, but this is still a good clip. It'll carry deep, but those screws are not recessed, so they might catch your pants a little bit. It depends on how thick the seam of your pocket is. For the most part, I mean, in and out of the pants on like regular thickness, yeah, it's fine. There's just not a lot to complain about, and it carries absolutely deep, and it's just a big rectangle. Not really, it's a small rectangle. So even if you are carrying something else in your pocket, this is a great knife to carry if your pockets are always full of stuff, because it's just not taking up a lot of room. And the flipper tab is, it's a front flipper, so it's not jutting out of the left or right hand side of the knife. So that's fine. I got no issues there. I don't know if it's a free spinning pivot. Knowing Civivi, it's probably not. There is another adjustment head over there. The blade is, despite being flipped about 1 billion times by me, it is absolutely completely centered. And lockup on this guy is absolutely solid. That is fantastic for such a, you know, a small, I don't want to say delicate, but yeah, I mean, a small knife. There's not a lot of surface contact all over the place to make me feel like it's, or make me expect it to be ultra secure, but it is. Lockup percentage on this guy is hovering around 60%. I mean, it's a thin blade and a thin liner. There's lots of surface contact, at least for those, you know, given how thick the materials are to begin with, so that's fine. So what is there to complain about here? There's not a lot of ergonomic lines, right? So you're going to have to, you know, just be careful where you're using it and what you're using it for. The jimping, I mean, why is it back here? It should be up here, but it doesn't really matter that it's, even you know, given that it's not in the right place, it wouldn't matter if it wasn't there entirely. So that's not that big of a deal. Fairly delicate blade, so be careful with that. This isn't really a forward choil, but it is nice that it's there so they can come down on the right place in your finger. Pocket clip has a bill. The pocket clip screws are not recessed. All these are really minor nitpicks. I mean, like, it almost seems stupid to complain about this stuff on such an inexpensive knife. This is really cool. It's not going to float everybody's boat, but yeah, if you like a nice, like, this is a nice general EDC knife that doubles as like just a cool, like just a nice looking gentleman's knife. I mean, this, truthfully, yeah, this is a knife that I think I'd carry just about anywhere, you know, despite the slight risk of dropping it due to there not being any ergonomic lines and it being a front flipper. But yeah, I mean, can I recommend this? Yeah. I really think this knife is great. And I don't know if I mentioned, but yeah, it does run on bearings. We should probably have looked in there. Yeah, you can see they're running on bearings. So that is fantastic. It's also got an internal stop, which is something I didn't mention. Not that that absolutely matters, but just for your information. This is a wonderful knife. Yeah, for people who like this aesthetic and who are looking for something small and not cumbersome, right? This is just a fantastic knife. I think to make this a knife that's not recommendable, it is absolutely recommendable, absolutely worth the money, coming in at about $50. It'll be more and less, I'm sure, as time goes on. But for 50 bucks, yeah, check this knife out. Like I said, links in the description. Pick the color you like. This is super cool. That's going to be pretty much it for today's review, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.